Hi everybody, welcome to Sprague Woodturning. My name is Jim. If you haven't been here before, this is predominantly a turning channel. I do some flat work, but it is mostly a turning channel. And this week we're going to do something a little different. I want to make a hollow form and I'm going to use it. I'm going to use some walnut shavings and cherry shavings from previous projects. Really fine shavings. So this will give us a different look from the last time that we did a shavings hollow form. And this was suggested in the comments, and what I'm going to do is just combine this with Hypershift from Designer Epoxy. So this should give us a really cool look, and I've got quite a bag of these, so I don't know if we're going to use all these, but anyway, we'll see. All right, let's get over to the casting bench and get some resin mixed up and start casting these shavings. So here's the bucket that I'm going to use. I like using this, you know, it's a good size. It's like probably 9 inches across, but it's nice and deep. So we're going to have to use the vacuum chamber to do this. So it's good to have a deeper bucket so that, you know, you don't have to deal with so much bubbling over. Now I know that these are going to pack in here really tightly. So that's about 5 inches in depth. I guess we'll throw the whole thing in. So that's about 6 inches now. Once the resin goes in, it's going to shrink even further. I would say we're going to lose at least an inch, but I'm going to have to put something on this to keep these from floating. Now that should contain the majority of them. And on top of that, I'll get a weight. We'll put the weight on here. There. Let's mix up some resin. This week we're going to be using deep casting epoxy from Designer Epoxy. Surprising how much epoxy this piece ends up using. That's for sure. And we're going to use some Hypershift in it. Like I said earlier, this is the red, purple, and blue, which I think is my favorite of all the Hypershifts so far. There are 5 of them now, so it's really hard to pick a favorite, but this is certainly near the top. I'm sure that's not going to be enough, but gives you an idea what it's going to look like. All right, well, here is the first 1.5 liters. I'd be surprised if this does it. It's last time it took a lot more than I thought it was going to take. I'm definitely thinking this is going to give us a really interesting look. And know that's going to drop off. I'll just give this a couple minutes and see how far it drops here. Might even be quicker to put this in the vacuum chamber and then we'll add to it as we need it. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Vacuum chamber coming up next. I was going to use the vacuum chamber anyway. This certainly sped up the process. I don't know how long it would have took for the epoxy to weep down into this casting, so the vacuum chamber is certainly preferred here. Well, that didn't take very long. I guess I better mix some more up. Be right back. So this is another 1.5 liters. So this will bring it up to 3 liters. And I know that some may think that that's a lot, but we might have to add more yet. Hey, here we go again. I think one of the reasons why I'm attracted to this Hypershift so much is because I like the look of mother of pearl, and this gives you that look, but it gives you that purpley mother of pearl look. And I'm finding that as I'm casting here, purple's one of my favorites. Like I said, I think we need more. Bring it back when that's done. Okay, this will bring it to 4.5 liters, and it's not going to get any more than this, whether it needs it or not. If you're going to attempt to do this kind of a casting, you've got to have a vacuum chamber. If you don't use the vacuum chamber while doing this, your work is going to be full of bubbles, and I mean full. Even after using the vacuum chamber and the pressure pot, I still ended up with a number of bubbles in this work when it was done. So keep that in mind if you're going to try to cast shavings. She's slippery. Oh man, I can't believe that needs more resin. It's important not to panic when this overflows. That way you don't have a gigantic mess to clean up. Let's try this again. Man, I'm gonna need more. The reason why I say that you need a vacuum chamber is because there is a ton of air trapped inside of those shavings. So if you don't have some way to remove that air, like a vacuum chamber, when you go to cast this, it is just going to be like I said, you'll be overrun with bubbles, and well, it's just going to create a lot more work for you. All right, so I lied. I'm going to give it another 3/4 of a liter here. Wish this rock could stay on there straight. Yeah, that was one of the more irritating things when doing this casting. I think I had the same problem last time too. With all the air being extracted out of that casting, it kind of squeezes the bucket together and pushes. That's a very heavy rock, and as you can see, it's just pushing the rock up and down. So of course the shavings underneath of that are kind of moving around, and then it slides to one side. So anyway, that's maybe a solution might be to try and tape it down in place. But anyway, eventually we get it, but it's not without some pain and anguish like it usually is. But in the end, it ends up being a really, really cool project. Well, okay, if this casting acts the way as the same as the other one that we did, then I think we're going to be okay. I see the resin sitting on top here. Last time this rock kind of slid, so I've leveled it in there as best I can. So hopefully it's there. Hopefully it's level when we take it out in 3 days. All right, well that's it. We'll see you then. Well, it's been 9 days. My wife and I took a trip to Florida, and anyway, we're down there for 9 days. So this casting will be absolutely, positively 100% cured. So people have asked me in the past if you can turn cured resin like this, fully cured, or epoxy, and of course the answer is yes. I've done it before here. So anyway, let's get this out of the casting bucket and see what we're looking at. I am happy to see resin on the very top of that. I'm a little surprised. I thought that maybe the wood may have soaked up a lot more of it, but they didn't. But that's good. So hopefully we don't have any voids, and we got a good solid casting. Welcome back, Jim, it says. Welcome back. Hopefully that's not a sign of things to come. You might also find that I'm a little hoarse, and that's because my wife and I got a cold when we were down there. 2 days into the trip, of course. So we're getting over it now. We tested, it's not COVID. So anyway, just the way it goes. Ooh, pretty colors. I like pretty. All right, well, if you remember, we've got that piece of plywood embedded in there. I'm just going to get a center on this, and we'll flip it over and get the other one. Well, it looks pretty dark, doesn't it? Actually kind of surprising. Thought it'd be a little lighter looking than that. But there is no thermal cracking. What I got here for depth? This is going to finish out around 5 inches or so. So that's over the recommended depth of pour, and again, we've got no thermal cracking, so that's awesome. Let's get on the lathe. That'll do. As per normal, the main thing we want to do right now is strip away any excess epoxy, get this thing running true, and then we need to unearth that piece of plywood that we've got in the top of this. So once that's done, then I'll be able to sit back and make a decision on what we're going to do with this piece. Now, my original thought was to make this hollow form. It's an enclosed bowl. I don't think you technically can call it a hollow form, but you certainly could if you wanted to, but the opening is a little too large for that. As far as our trip down south to Florida, we were at Kissimmee, and that's of course close to Orlando if you've never been there before, and that's our first time in Florida. It was interesting. I've got a tree app, so I was going around and checking out all these different trees that I'm not familiar with. Right on our resort, there was a bunch of really huge live oaks, which again I've never seen before, and longleaf pine, tons of that around there as well. Now the weather wasn't exactly the best. We typically don't travel down south this time of year. We'd like to go usually in, say, January or February, but of course we're going to put the house on the market this year, so we want to be around in case the house sells, and we want to have it ready and presentable for people that are going to be looking at the house as well. Other cool thing about Florida was I seen my first alligator in the wild, even though it was probably only about 20 inches long. just a little guy, but right beside the pool area that we had at the resort, there was a pond, and in this pond was all kinds of wildlife, lots of turtles and that alligator and different birds coming in. It was like the Wild Kingdom. There was lots of wildlife around, which is very cool. That's right up my alley. I enjoy nature and being in it. This alligator was, probably under 2 feet, so it wasn't really that big of a deal. But regardless, at least I didn't see it in a cage. Now, I've never used a piece of plywood for a tenon, so I had lots of concerns with that. The only reason why I was comfortable using it because I knew that it had lots of resin penetration in it. So I figured that it was probably safe to use, but I took the old knocking device just to give her a few smacks to see if anything was going to break loose, and it was good. You're probably going to wonder if we went to like Disney, Universal Studios and all that. My wife went to see Harry Potter, and it's not really my thing, so I stayed at the pool. There was a few days where the weather was really nice, but we did have a couple days where it was northern Florida had a frost warning, which I was like, man, this sucks. I've never been to Florida, and the weather wasn't exactly the best on the front end of the trip. All right, so it is decision time as to what we're going to do with this. I'm not going to overcomplicate this piece. I must say that I'm liking this a lot more than I thought I would. We do have some bubbles within the casting, and I was really expecting that. But it gives a really neat look. So I think all we're going to do is just break these corners off. And I don't know if I'm going to do a hull form with this or maybe just an enclosed bowl. But yeah, I don't think there's any need to overcomplicate things. But you never know. But I'm really digging the look of this. And I think it's going to look really sharp when it's polished. I should mention that we are using the Hercules from Hunter Tool Systems, and just like all of my other sponsors, there are links in the description to get 10% off of your order. Along with that, Gabriel from Designer Epoxy wanted me to pass a message on. So as we're heading into the Christmas sales part of the year here, he's going to be offering some deals, and he just wanted me to relay to you guys that, whenever there's a deal on, the deal is going to be better than using my code InlayJim. So, he can't offer, he can't give you a fantastic deal and then you use my code on top of that, because he's losing money at that point. So please keep that in mind. He's gotten a few messages from people wondering why my code isn't being honored, and that's the reason why. The Black Friday weekend sale, Cyber Monday, was that deal that he was offering was way better than using my code. So that's what we're going to be doing here in the future. So please keep that in mind when you're ordering from Designer Epoxy, that if it's a sale, it's probably going to be better than using my code. The great thing about turning these castings, and I know that it looks like I'm being covered in resin shavings, but they don't stay together, so it's not like silly string. So it's easy to wipe off your body and blow off the casting, and if it wraps around the spindle, it's easy to blow that off as well. And that's of course because of all the wood that's embedded in there. The look of this piece, I'm a little surprised at how dark it looks. I guess maybe there was more walnut shavings in there than there was cherry. And typically when cherry gets wet, it's going to look a little darker than it ordinarily does. So I guess that would explain a lot. But I really dig the look of this piece, and hopefully you guys do too. So go ahead and leave a comment down below and tell me what you think about this piece so far. I'm really surprised. I didn't think that I would like doing these castings, but I certainly do. And, based on your guys' reaction, we'll see how it goes. And I'll do probably a lot more of these in the future. Maybe even try and combine resin shavings with wood shavings in some aspect. But that's in the queue. A lot of people have been asking me about making lamps. That's in the queue as well. Got hopefully lots of really cool content coming up, so please stay tuned for that. Along with that, I'm going to mention this right now before I forget, that next week we are going to be doing the 110,000 subscriber giveaway for the 3-gallon kit from Designer Epoxy, and of course whatever project that I'm going to make next week. You're not going to see that in the heading or in the description next week, because I'm trying to keep the scammers away. So this is going to be pretty much our finished profile. The small little holes here, yes, I could turn these away, but I don't want to take any more off the size of this piece than I have to. So there's a few little holes here, just a handful of them. And what I'm going to use is the UV resin from Designer Epoxy. Yes, sir. It's going to be nice. Anyway, I'll go through the piece here. And of course, the stuff is cured with UV light. I'll leave it on here 2 minutes at a time. And when that's done, I'll bring it back for the final trimming, and then we'll figure out what we're going to do on the inside of this. That's the Phoenix you're watching me use up near that little collar area that I'm leaving on there. Then you'll see me switch back to the Hercules. And, you know, I'm just taking really, really light cuts here. There's no need to be overly aggressive here, that's for sure. And anyway, once that's done, we'll be able to drill this piece out and move on to hollowing. For drilling this piece out, as you've seen, I lowered the speed down to 475. I don't see the need to go much higher than that when you're drilling pieces out like this on the lathe. Started with 1 3/8, I believe it is, and then stepped it up to 2.5 inches. And that will allow the body of the Jacob's chuck to go down deeper into the casting. So that's, you can't really do that unless you're using a much larger drill bit. I do have a 3-inch, but it is it takes a lot of power, and every time I use it, I'm kind of a little worried that it may break the tenon off. So that's why you don't see me use it all that much. All right, so we are all set up and ready for hollowing. This is the one-way captive system. If you haven't seen it before, I did get the clamping block from Mike Hunter. I sent him a message to see if these are going to be available on his website. So I'm not sure, but I'm hoping that they are, because it looks to be a lot better than the setup I was using. Got the steady rest in place. Debated on not using it, but the only reason that I'm going to use it is because I'm having a hard time getting a real good bite on that resin penetrated piece of plywood. So, you know, I'm going to err on the side of caution. And of course, this is the captive system from One Way. Modified the laser setup. Here is the laser. That's a laser you mount onto a gun. And I just had to extend this here for it to go over top of the steady rest. And right now we've got set it about that. So this is a great little cutter from Hunter Tools as well. Anyway, I don't know how much we're going to be able to get done today, because I've got to go out and plow the driveway because we got our first major snowfall. Well, not major, about 4 inches. Anyway, we'll tackle this and see how far we get today. So I did manage to get a hold of Mike, and he says that he does have some of these, but they're not on the website. So when you're on the website, send him an email, and he can discuss the price and get them shipped out to you. He did say that he's got very limited stock on them, so if you're looking to get one of these, I would get it sooner than later, because it may not be there later. Yeah, 4 inches of snow. Welcome home. that was our welcome home. So pretty typical. And I mean, 4 inches here is pretty much nothing. I know that some people that live maybe in the southern U.S. or even further down towards the equator, 4 inches of snow would be devastating. But here in Canada, well, especially in this part of Canada, 4 inches is nothing. If I had to guess, I would say that on average we get close to 4 feet of snow. That's why I have a tractor. But always growing up in a snowy environment as a Canadian, it would be really weird living on the west coast of Canada, which, you know, British Columbia doesn't typically get. Well, I shouldn't say the interior of British Columbia probably gets a lot of snow, but if you're on the coast, it's essentially a rainforest. So it would be weird growing up in an environment and not seeing snow on a regular basis like we do here. So, you know, for you righties, you may look at this and say, well, you know, why didn't you use the Hercules to do this? And that's because I'm left-handed. Again, we've got a bunch of new subs, so I'll cover this again. I'm left-handed, so I like to turn on the outboard end of my general. This is a 20-inch general, and it's got left-hand threads on the outboard end of it. And I typically like to turn on the outboard end just because it's more comfortable for me. But when it comes to work like this, I was a little concerned about that tenon, so, you know, I wanted that steady rest in there for the support. And for me, using the hollowing rig, is the best option. The other thing is the cutter that I'm using from Hunter Tool Systems there's left-hand ones and right-hand ones. When I first started, I was actually using the left-hand, the left side cutter, and that puts the cutter more in a straight up and down position. I switched it out, and now you can see the shavings are much larger. For whatever reason, I didn't catch that, and all of a sudden I was like, oh yeah, let's put this other one in and see how we work. And it did. It certainly is more aggressive now that I'm using the right-handed one. Another notable tree that we've seen in Florida that I'd never seen in person was a sweet gum tree. And it was growing near a barbecue area, so I'm assuming that they would rake all of the pods up after they fell, because nobody wants to step on those. I was having some issues with the rig sticking, so I decided to take a Scotch Brite pad, rub all the surfaces, all the contact surfaces down, and then I'm going to use a product right here called Glide Coat, and it absolutely works fantastic. There's a number of these on the market. I'm assuming that they're all probably the same. This one came from Lee Valley, if you're curious. But after you get that done, I mean, it just slides so effortlessly. And, it's important that you're not fighting the rig, because if you are, that's a good way to get a catch. So after putting that on there, things were just as smooth as can be. Happy days. That's the teardrop cutter that you can get for this system, and that is a new one, freshly sharpened. I was able to use the large boring bar throughout the whole turning process here due to the openness of this. I didn't need to go to any other bent bars, so that was good. And I'm just taking some long sweeping finishing cuts with this. Since it's freshly sharpened, it'll give you a really nice clean surface before we start doing any sanding. Due to the size of this, the reason why I didn't really show any laser footage is because the laser wasn't really doing much for me. Down in the very bottom area right there, I would see it, and then I would lose it right there, basically all the way out to the top. So I just basically manually measured this instead of relying on the laser. The laser was good down in the bottom, because the rig is in the way as far as trying to use any sort of measuring device to do so. But right in that area, you're pretty much flying blind, so I figured it was best to just measure it manually. Here I'm just using the Phoenix to take some more finishing cuts on that collar area, just to kind of crispen it up before we move on to sanding, finally. These are the 3.5-inch nipple discs from sandpaper.ca. I originally started sanding like this, and then I switched back to the extension. I wanted more wrap around the sanding pad, and it's a smaller one, so that's why I switched back to that. Now, there was a few bubbles still remaining inside and outside of the casting. And so, I want to do a resin coat on this before we do any other finishing on this. Up near the top, underneath of where the plywood was, there was some small little micro cracks. So that was another reason to use the epoxy to seal those all up. But anyway, I'm just sanding I'm sanding 60 and 80 grit here, and then we'll be able to do a resin coat. An epoxy coat, sorry. Okay, well here's where we are. Some bubbling in there that we need to address. And it's kind of throughout the whole piece. Everything's been sanded to 80 grit. Rotate this and get a look. So, I think that probably the best thing to do here is to use some Pro Series. There's some on the outside as well, but not as many as there is on the inside. So anyway, let's get some Pro Series mixed up, and we'll do a coat inside and out. And tomorrow we'll be able to put on a coat of finish. To apply the Pro Series, I'm using a silicone barbecue brush. That's what I'm using here. People ask me, how do I clean this? I clean it in acetone. I typically just leave it sitting in acetone overnight and then kind of blow it out in the morning, and it's back to its perfect state, and it doesn't do anything to the silicone. You'll see me use my glove hand here. I want to make sure to push all of that epoxy down into those bubbles, into those small little micro cracks near the back where my hand is back there. Really wanted to limit how much I'm putting on there, so that's why I'm using the scraper. And I didn't have much sagging the next day either. That was interesting. Well, what do you think of that? This is, I think, even better than the other one that I did with the long shavings. You can 100% see the hypershift in there. It's nice and sparkly. Very cool. I didn't think that I would like doing these as much as I do, but it's absolutely beautiful. And you can kind of see where those little holes are in there. So this, I'm just going to set this in the clean room like this, and any excess resin's going to hopefully fill them holes in the bottom. I don't think there's enough on there to sag on the outside, but I don't know, maybe. There, you can see the hyper shift. Right full of awesomeness. Love it. All right, we'll see you tomorrow for what will be probably the first coat of finish. I'm not going to resin coat it twice. I think we'll go with Waterlux tomorrow. See you then. So this is in fact the next day, and I started sanding with 180. So this piece was sanded from 180 to 800. There was you can see where there's like a buildup where the resin, or sorry, the epoxy did run down and sit in the center of it. So it wasn't really that big of a deal, but it was clogging the sandpaper. So you'll see me every now and then blowing the sandpaper off. To be honest with you, the epoxy probably wasn't fully cured, so that's why it was doing that. And when the epoxy is fully cured, you typically don't run into these issues. And then, of course, did the same thing on the outside. And that one coat of epoxy really did a fabulous job. It's a little out of balance right now, and that's because this is now outboard, so I had to take it out of the inboard chuck and put it in the outboard chuck. And typically when you do that, it's pretty hard to get things running exactly true again, but it was running true enough that it wasn't an issue sanding this piece. After the 800, now we're going to buff this piece out with the Triple E buffing compound from the Be All buffing system. To be honest with you, this probably wasn't needed. There was no resin areas in this that there's just no resin areas in this period. It's all kind of combined with the wood shavings. So I don't know. I'm just kind of a creature of habit. I know that it gives you a superior surface. And don't throw away your small buffs, because you'll be able to use them on the inside of pieces like this. And all of these buffing attachments come from Lee Valley. And the last thing we want to do here is clean this up with denatured alcohol before first coat of finish goes on. All right, this is the first coat of Waterlux Gloss. A lot of people ask me what I use to apply the finishes, and worn out t-shirts work fantastic as long as there's no embossing on them. So hold on to them old t-shirts, and you can reuse them to put your finishes on. Well, there you go. She looks clean. Wow, I don't only need one coat. As I see some dust floating around. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this. I can see the hyper shift, but the camera doesn't seem to be picking it up. Anyway, if there's a second coat, I will do it the same way. If not, we'll see you when we're doing the foot. I absolutely love this. Might have to keep it. Here the piece is mounted on my vacuum chuck. If you don't have a vacuum chuck and you do a lot of bowls, highly recommend getting one. Just be careful if the bottom of your bowl is starting to get thin, it can actually deform the bottom of your bowl. Anyway, once this is done, I've sanded this piece from 180 to 320. I didn't really see the need to go any higher than that because I'm going to do some engraving on the bottom of this. Alright, that's going to do it for the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Please leave a comment down below and let's have a little chat about this project. Well, let me know in the comments what you think about this beautiful bowl. I'll call it a bowl because that's what I think it is. And very dark. I didn't anticipate it being this dark. There you can see the hyper shift. Coincidentally, this would have been the top, but there seems to be more hyper shift up here. You would think the hyper shift would be on the bottom of the casting, but there seems to be more on the top, or sorry, on the very bottom, which would have been the top initially. I decided to do the engraving on the bottom of this. I'll give you some dimensions. I'll put the metric conversion up on the screen. It is 8.5 inches across at its widest point, 4 3/4 inches tall, and 1/2 inch to 5/8 in thickness roughly on the inside, a little thicker maybe in the bottom, the way I like it. Anyway, let me know in the comments what you think about this beautiful little bowl. I absolutely love it. Now inside, I don't know, it did take 2 coats of finish. I don't know if you pick that up or not. There seems to be, it's hard to explain. Very shiny though. Just kind of streaks on the inside. So there's less than there was yesterday. So maybe it needs another coat on the inside of the Waterlux and it will be ready to go to its new home. And this piece is for sale. If you're interested, give me an email, spraguewoodturning@gmail.com, and I will disclose the price then. I absolutely love this piece. Don't forget to put designer epoxy in the comments down below. This will be your last chance to be entered into this draw at 110,000. And along with that, by putting a comment down below, you'll also be entered into my giveaway, which I don't even know what it's going to be next week. Getting back from Florida, I just kind of under a time crunch to get this video done. But anyway, hopefully it'll be something cool. So please come on back next week for that. All right, well, that's it. Take care, stay safe. Don't forget the bell. Please share my videos with your friends. That is the largest way for me to build my presence here on YouTube. And of course, that thumbs up will help with the analytics as well. We'll see you next week.